it's happened really quick. We're downsizing, so, we have,
Yeah, I was just gonna see even if whatever is.
so we sold, we actually sold both places. We sold the place in Washington,
Yeah.
and we sold the place on Hill in Nicolay.
No one is.
And we found the place on,
There was.
North River Road.
Somebody got it.
So it kind of checks all the boxes. It's got
Kids who might be.
what we need for that, for, they keep both there. Just consolidate. We went, we halved our square, well, more than half our square footage. I mean, it's all. Yeah, it's good. So we're moving today.
Oh my goodness.
We're gonna close on that. Right. The small one, and we closed. It's about 5 minutes more. Just coming across. Yeah, sure.
Does your mom?
Actually, it was 17 minutes. Oh, good morning.
Last year, actually, that's when we had this long discussion.
Lisa
Me
last
too, I didn't like it either.
Yeah, we had set it up because they used to, I don't know if you're doing it today, but they would do their retreat.
Yeah, we did a retreat.
Originally, that was so that everybody could, they were here already, but yeah, it didn't work very good this year.
Maybe next year, we just need to do a standard.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not 6, maybe it's 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite difficult. Sure does.
That's what I told them, and I was apologizing, so I said, that's why we have a meeting. Yeah, we have jobs, right?
Yeah.
I bet it's for house waiting for you.
No, I know. what you said,
Okay.
right?
That's right. Okay, well, welcome to the Tuesday, July 16th, 2024 Board of Education meeting. We have 6 members present. You can stand and do the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We got recognition, is that right? That's correct.
Okay, additions and deletions, none. Public communication on agenda items. That moves us to the general consent agenda. The general consent agenda consists of the minutes, A, the minutes of the June 6, 2024 Special Board of Education meeting, B, the minutes of the June 6, 2024 closed session meeting, C, minutes of the June 6, 2024 Board of Education workshop, D, minutes of the June 12, 2024 Special Board of Education meeting monthly session, E, minutes of the June 20th, 2024 Board of Education meeting, F, the treasurer's report for May of 2024, G, waiving of the first reading of revised board policies, H, the appointment of treasurer, and I, the establishment of fund depositories and investment resolution. May I have a resolution, Mr. Toth?
Be it therefore resolved that the Detroit Board of Education takes action to approve items A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and I on the consent agenda.
Support.
Matt's not here, we don't know what to do.
I know. All right, well, I have Dr. Wilson there as the second on that. Are there any questions or comments on the consent agenda?
I do want to comment, especially with the appointment of the treasurer. I think we had discussed it last year, a couple of months ago, because we appoint our business services assistant supervisor as a treasurer, and we should look at it if we should have a position transition mode. We did discuss it, and we will revisit it later and look at it in the beginning of 2024 when we appoint the new positions and see if we should do that as part of the board itself.
So we had, said we will add a discussion point on this in a future workshop, but prior to January. And then we can make a decision about if we want to change that starting the next fiscal year. Fiscal, actually, the next one year, next calendar year.
Calendar year, exactly.
Okay.
I guess my only addition to that would be, when we do have that as a discussion item, as it's presented, we need to understand what the full scope of all of the duties and responsibilities are, approximately how much time it takes, and then to see if we can somehow talk to districts where there is a board member or committee that functions to see realistically what that role and responsibility.
You already had some of those conversations.
Yeah, we're.
I don't need
Yeah.
this, I'm just saying,
Any district that you reach out to has a board member that serves as treasurer. In fact, we're the only county that has the CFO as the board treasurer. And we went back to research how
Try to
all
figure
the
out,
roles that,
yeah.
and it goes well beyond my being here. Mike Damczyk, who was CFO when I got here, was treasurer at the time, so no one can seem to figure out when that happened. It might just be that.
and it might not necessarily be a bad thing, so just, you know, it's
So
okay
there'll
to
be
be
plenty of
different.
opportunity to talk to folks and
There
get
was one
feedback.
point, I guess,
Yeah.
maybe a conversation here.
Yeah.
There was some discussion and there is some rationale, as to why we didn't.
And that's probably for that discussion, I was just saying, as part of that, the information we need to.
We'll bring it to workshop and we'll get back for you at the workshop.
Okay.
Dan will have some good feedback, because
Okay.
Yep.
that's a full-time service.
Okay. All right. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, say no. Thank you. All motion passes. Okay, that brings us to personnel. Any Dahl?
Busy man, it's over the summer.
Board?
Oh. He's got a spring in his step, but he's been having.
I certainly do, I certainly do. I have two items for your consideration today, the first of which is consideration of a contract ratification between the board and our Troy secretaries. A tentative agreement between representatives of the Troy Board of Education and the Troy Education Secretaries Association, TESA MEA, was reached on June 10th, 2024. The TESA membership voted to ratify the agreement on June 25th, 2024. The tentative agreement is a contract for a period of July 1, 2024 through June 30th, 2028. A memo detailing all modifications of the successor collective bargaining agreement was presented to the board for its consideration.
Thank you for bringing us to ratify the TESA contract. May I have a resolution, please? Salish?
Be it therefore resolved that the Board of Education hereby ratifies and adopts the tentative agreement reached on June 25, 2024 between representatives of the Troy Board of Education and the Troy Education Secretaries Association for the period of July 1, 2024 through June 30th, 2028.
Support.
Resolution by Ms. Salish, support by Ms. Lynn. Any questions or comments on this one?
So, John, for both of these, do we know what the, or you just remind us what the total dollar figure is for that contract?
Yes, so for the TESA agreement, it's approximately $300,000, and for the TESPA agreement, it's approximately $350,000.
Okay, great.
And it's over the lifetime of the agreement?
Yes.
2 years. And then these are these also for 3 years, or are these for 4?
This is for 4.
Both.
How did we get to 4?
Funny, you should ask that question.
I mean, I'm happy about it, but I'm.
You know, as you go through language, one of the last items that you bargain is the duration of the contract. And all along in the TESA agreement, we have been talking 3 all along. And then kind of made a side comment when we got there. I said, unless there's any interest for a 4th year, and they kind of looked at each other together and said, can we caucus for a few minutes, and we did. And they said there would be some interest, let's talk terms, and the terms were agreeable, and so we decided to move it to 4. I think there was some appetite on both sides to not have all of the contracts expire at the same time in the same year.
Yep.
From an employee services standpoint, that's certainly, I have to tell you
Well,
that.
point.
So, and it happened that way, and then similarly with TESPA, a similar discussion occurred, and he said we have an appetite for 4 as well.
Great.
Or not, you not have to wait for the teacher.
Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, say no. Thank you. We can ratify TESPA contract.
That brings us to consideration for our TESPA contract, a tentative agreement between representatives of the Troy Board of Education and the Troy Education Support Personnel Association. TESPA MEA was reached on July 8th, 2024. The TESPA membership will be voting to ratify the agreement beginning on July 18th, 2024. The tentative agreement is a contract for a period of July 1, 2024 through June 30, 2028. A memo detailing all modifications of the successor collective bargaining agreement was presented to the board for its consideration.
I think we're being asked to ratify the TSPA contract.
Be therefore resolved that the Board of Education hereby ratifies and adopts the tentative agreement reached on July 8, 2024 between the representatives of the Troy Board of Education and the Troy Education Support Personnel Association, TESPA/MEA, for a period of July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2028.
Support.
Resolution by Ms. Lenny, supported by Mr. Hawk. Any questions or comments on this one?
Like it says they don't get to start voting to ratify it until Thursday, so what will that look like?
So they do it electronically as well. It usually takes a couple of days. They have a process by which they have to present to their executive board first. That has been approved. Then they do a general membership meeting, and that has taken place. All the questions were answered, and now it goes into voting. So it's just the timing of the TA versus when we had the board meeting. And so it is not an uncommon thing. It is a little bit of Troy, but not generally that we would go first. Either way, both sides have to agree.
Approximately how many people are in each of these?
Tessa is smaller. I want to say our para group is in the 60 to 70 range now, and Tessa a little bit less than that. Or Tessa a little bit less than that.
I had a question on this one because when I read the summary last night, it was an immediate $2 bump, but it also said 2% on the way down. So can you explain to me how, because I assume that's why they weren't at 3, is because there was
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. So the percentages apply to all members of TESPA.
Okay.
And those percentages are as they're stated for the 4-year sequence. And then we have added a $2 per hour premium for those working in our most difficult to fill programs, our categorical programs. That is a new bargaining pre-common trend in the county and the state.
So who's out of that, the TESPA union, who doesn't get that immediate bump? Who's left? I read all the job descriptions, but I don't know who else is living with
Yeah,
there.
so that would be our ELD folks and our resource room here, so would be the one of the others.
That don't get them.
That don't get
that. Another piece is often when we have a resource or an ELD opening, in the past, it has been, there has been a migration, if you will, from the categorical folks over to these other programs. And so this is an incentive to hopefully retain some folks there and then certainly attract.
And migration, because it's a little bit easier.
It's just a different pace, a little different pace.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, say no. Thank you. We have a new contract for TSPA.
Thank you all for all of your support all the way through this season.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you for,
Thank you.
I know it's been an intense.
A slog.
Yeah,
We
there-
word that got pushed to August, because Jordan had a couple things he wanted to change.
So
Or
we have
press.
some work to do on that yet, so we'll bring that back to you in August. Okay.
And that's actually, that works out okay, because we'll want to talk about his contract as well, and we just haven't had any available to have each other. So I think we'll probably want to set a closed session of something between here and the August meeting.
$205. I mean, same day, or?
We may go to, yeah. We'll talk about it, yes. I was gonna hear about it today, so.
Depending on what we're talking about, we might need further.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking was that we may have to,
Thank you,
All right,
John.
thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Okay, so, we have no curriculum, correct?
That's correct.
Just sitting around over there doing nothing. All right, and business, we have none?
That's correct.
Then we have public communication, non-agenda items, and we have one from a Mr. Andrew Pass. Mr. Pass, you can come sit down here, and you have 3 minutes. It's not a chance, if you've never addressed the board before, it's an opportunity for you to offer your comments to the board, but the process of the meeting is that we will not have a conversation with you. If there needs to be a response, we'll get back to you after the board. That's your chance to do it, and we'll do 3 minutes.
Fantastic, thank you. It's just brief. I'm Andrew Pass, and I am the founder of an educational content development company that develops bespoke content. We're 15 years old, and for the last 15 years, we've worked with publishers and providers. And now we're starting to work with schools directly. I know that certainly this is an administrative discussion and not a board discussion, but I like coming to board meetings and introducing myself as well. So you might ask, what motivated me to go into and to continue in this kind of work? I have a 29-year-old son who is, and remember, it's not Troy School District, but I'm sure that there's a similar person in the Troy school system. Smartest person I know. Loves to learn. Hated school. Dropped out of high school. Got into drugs. And nearly killed himself. 29 years old. Back on track. Thank God. But I used to say, when he was in high school, I had been a former teacher, if he was 10 years old, younger, school would be different. And there'd be the curriculum, the content, the programs that would motivate him because he was smart. Maybe video game learning, maybe more gamification in other ways. Just something to capture his attention and make him realize that there's a whole world out there. Well, it was 10 years later. And from my knowledge of the curriculum, we're still struggling. It's still challenging. And so my dream is to work with schools to catch the Michaels and the other kids who I'm sure you know their names, and help them recognize that they matter, that their learning matters. And I do believe that by creating content in which the student is at the center, we can do just that. And that is why I wake up every morning and work all day, because we can make a difference. And I know that the people who are sitting in the school obviously care greatly and recognize the urgency of it. So, like, we're all on the same page, and I just wanted to introduce myself, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Pass.
Thank you.
I'll follow up with you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, and that makes this two-part. First is the consideration, second reading and adoption of some new board policies or adjusted board policies. First reading of the board policies mentioned under this morning's consent agenda have been waived, has been waived in accordance with policy 1000.03, adoption or amendment of bylaws and policies. And now at this time, the Troy Board of Education will proceed to consider and act on revisions and or adoption of policies. 1000.03, adoption or amendment of bylaws and policies. 1004, conflict between policies and administrative regulations, new. 2000.07, cardiac emergency response plan. $3,000.05, selection of media center library materials, $3,000.06, parental objections, $4,000.05, other matters of employment, political activities, $4,000.05, other matters of employment, prohibition of referral or assistance, to remove that, $8,000.07, discrimination and harassment, and $8,000.09, digital communications. May I have a resolution, please? Dr. Gilbert?
Be it therefore resolved that the Troy Board of Education approves changes and or adoption of the board policies as stated above. Support.
Resolution by Dr. Phillips, supported by Ms. Alish. Comments or questions on this?
One, in 1708, who is the person who has been named in the next resolution?
That's the, Title IX.
Yeah.
That'd be John.
Okay, I wasn't sure who that was.
Yeah, so his name will be put in there.
Okay, because I was like, it says, yeah, that'd be.
Who
is the name?
Not me.
That's Rich, the same question,
Yeah.
that yesterday.
And then also the one about the conflict between policy and resolution, I feel like there should be something in that about like that it's been checked with, like that it follows the law before it does, just because I'm concerned if somebody, if people pass a policy or if a law changed, like that there's something in there that makes sure that it's matching the law before it automatically defaults from there.
And Nicole had asked this question, and Nancy or Gary can certainly chime in as well, having been part of that conversation. The impetus for that change was primarily to focus on the fact that if over time, as administration changes and administrative regulations change as a result, so administrators coming in might interpret policy differently, and as a result, change administrative regulations. The idea here is that if there's ever a conflict, the policy is the board's policy is what holds. I think to address your concern, it's making sure that the policy committee meets regularly and our policies are always consistent and have been vetted legally.
Yeah.
Which is the process we have in place now. So maintaining that process would I think address your concern that the policies are up to speed.
Yeah.
Legal.
Don't we say in the preamble to our policies that, again, the policy, it's a hierarchy.
Right.
Law, board policy, administrative regulations. So.
So I think that's
So
a
it is-
blanket,
I was gonna
that's
say, I
cross
just wanna know
blanket,
that
it's a
that's
blanket.
in there.
And in fact, most of these policy changes, many of them are not terribly substantive, but they're done to be more consistent with changes in the law.
I just want to make sure that we have that piece spelled out.
Yeah, this is one to actually, this is designed to protect the board to make sure that policy always supersedes administrative regulations. Because over time, administrative regulations can change. Not done in accordance with the board's intent, it should always revert back to the intent of the board with respect to that policy.
Yeah, it looked like for all the other changes, they were either to be consistent with changes in law or simplification of clarification. Nothing seemed good. It's just.
Yes, I do have something regarding the personal social media authorization thing, the policy 8009. So, I read this as, there is social media that is approved by the district, and then there's personal social media, and somehow a differentiation.
Mhm.
And then the superintendent, or someone who the superintendent designates are the ones who are going to approve it. Is that correct?
Correct.
Is that what I hear?
Yes, it would be Kendra who would.
Okay, so what happens to all these X accounts that all our teachers have where they post all their school activities? Do we mark them as approved? How do we do that?
No, I think it's just, those are personal accounts. And they can do what they want, but I read this policy say they're not ours.
Yeah.
And that provides, that's First Amendment protections for those people. If it's ours, then suddenly now they can't, they're are certain things they can't do. They can't block somebody, they can't not, respond to somebody. So the idea is to say, we disassociate with anything other than our approved stuff. So it actually protects the rights of any of us that are on social media. It's treated as a personal account, and it's not affiliated with the organization.
But they post all the time, it's
Sure.
school stuff,
But it's
and
also-
class stuff, and
it's
all
also-
the parents sign up to it, to listen and hear and all of those, so, but it's still considered personal. Okay.
It's all in person. The idea here is that Kendra in this case would manage all district identified accounts. And the thought being is that if there's anything on there that has been approved by the district, has been vetted through the district, and if there was something on there that was inappropriate, she is authorized to remove that.
So me as a parent, let's say, how do I differentiate between a teacher posting a whole lot of school stuff, but it's a personal account, versus school designated account? Are we going to have a differentiation so that the parents
It's the
know?
Troy School District's Twitter page versus Joe Smith's Twitter page.
I get that, but as a parent, Mrs. Herbert's Twitter page is better for me because they talk all about my kid, right? So that's kind of what I'm saying. And how do we let the parent know that, I'm using the example of Mrs. Herbert, but I let them know that it is still her personal space even though she is posting all about her classroom.
I mean, it is possible to, once this policy goes into effect, at the beginning of next year, Kendra does the weekly newsletter and says, these are the officially designated district channels. Okay,
Actually
1,
does that.
2, 3. Your teacher may have her own. That is not a. There's, I mean, Kendra would know how to say that, but there's a way. You know, in as many ways as you communicate it, a lot of parents are still not gonna maybe care, listen, or whatever, but, you know, you put it in the weekly newsletter because that is our official form of communication with parents, and
Do we want to go to the next level by saying like, okay, if you have this little TSD logo, this means it's officially approved, this is not?
No,
because-
this is really legal protection for anybody other than us, that's what it is. Like, the idea is, because it's gone through the courts, and that, and that was, so it allows somebody on a personal level, if someone was harassing them, they can block them. And where the school district doesn't have that ability, right? So the idea is to say, the idea is to tell everybody, those are your accounts, and you can handle them as a personal account, and you have all the protections of the individual. Because the school doesn't have those protections.
I'm on board with all of
Yeah.
that. My only question is, should we clearly differentiate as soon as you see the account? That's the only.
how do you do that? Because you don't have control over somebody's personal account, so I can't designate it on their personal account, this is not a school district account.
Well, the way we could do that is to have certain things sealed or whatever.
What if they put the seal on there? Are you
We
gonna?
can't let them.
But see, that
I know, but that requires us to
Monitor them,
Right.
okay, that's too much.
We don't
Okay,
have-
I get
yeah.
that.
So
Okay.
what you
That's a
do
good
in the
point.
weekly newsletter, which is the official communication that the district has with parents, and say, hey, welcome back to the new school year, these are the official communication, these are the only, in big
Yeah.
letters, official communications from the district to families. 1, 2, 3, whatever they are. That's it. I mean, there's,
All right, makes sense.
And Kendra will do that.
yeah.
Any other questions on the policies? See none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, say no. Thank you. And thank you to the
Policy committee.
policy committee for doing the work.
Nancy and Matt here.
Okay, so, we talked about the book, but why don't we go just do other, and see if there's anything else that people want to talk about, and then we'll think about it. Do you have anything,
I do have another, last week I was invited to visit United Community Family Services. It's the Kelly American Ladies and Charity. I think it's they changed their name, but they are located in Troy, about 10 years where they've been a great facility. So somebody just invited me to go visit and see what they have.
Yeah, I got the invitation
too. I think, did you participate?
In any case, I visited, I was familiar with them, but I was really impressed by the level of wraparound services that they have. So one, I told them about TYA, but they also maybe have some opportunities for our families and our students. So, I mean, they work quite a lot with refugees, but they also, so one, they don't just service Dublin families, they service all families. They have a lot of grant money that's connected to refugees, but they're also able to service really any family who has financial needs. But what was interesting, so there are, you know, from food banks to those types of services, but what was really interesting to me is they actually have a program for kids during the school year. They have about 90 kids signed up to a weekly tutoring session, and about 30 to 40 kids show up every Tuesday. So one, they are always looking for volunteers. High schoolers would probably be good for that. And so that's one where some of our, I think our National Honor Society students are looking for volunteers. And so that's a fixed time, concrete place, and they're located in Troy. The other thing is they're also able to offer services to our families. So if there are any refugee families or any other families who have financial needs, they do the intake, and then they will provide them with a full range of services, everything from getting household items to, you know, the simple types of things like household items. They do have a bi-weekly food drive, but then they also do have, you know, maternity services, et cetera, et cetera. Like they have a lot of wraparound services. So if there are families in our district who could use additional supports, they have those available as well. And then I told them about TYA, and their current director actually volunteers at another youth assistance in Oakland County, and she did not realize that
That we had one.
there was an Oakland County thing.
Oh.
She, you know, and so I told her it wasn't Oakland County, because they've expanded some of their services into Pontiac and into Oakland Park. And I said, if you have students that are Troy, you know, students that you're helping,
That's right.
if you who are students or residents of the Troy School District, we can potentially assist as well with things like camp skill building. So she was not aware, and I told her, like, if your students are in Pontiac or Oak Park or, you know, any other city in Oakland County, they might have access to those things as well. So they didn't realize that. So I feel like it's, you know, it might not be something where, you know, it's 100 families that are helped here, but I do think that there's probably, especially if we have refugee families coming into our district, they can offer all sorts of supports that we cannot, and they have a substantial amount of grant money for that, so.
If a refugee family comes in, is that through Waterline or, is that like, should she know that?
Yeah, they would, and so, and we would typically connect that family with our parent liaison, just in the unit.
Okay.
And then she would work directly with the family. She has resources that she would want to connect with families.
So it's important that those folks know this exists too,
Yeah.
as well.
So I'm gonna connect the meeting actually with.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, I haven't set an appointment that to do the tour, but I'm thinking maybe I'll bring my community along with me. Because, so that just if he sees firsthand, what are some of those things that are available,
Yeah.
you know, so.
Yeah, and so I think it's, so one, our high school students who need community hours can go, there's a specific date and time, it's very fixed where they can go help assist with tutoring, but I think there's a lot of assistance that.
Given it's right here in Troy, maybe we should be taking advantage, or at least connect families.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we could connect them to the National Honor Society coordinators of high schools, right?
Yeah.
So, okay.
And I also left, the one pager, and I've asked them to go grab a few more of these, and I'll do that as well. I've left this with Troy Youth Assistance, and now that not officially. I'm no longer the treasurer.
And if you can get a couple of additional. we'll
I'll
make sure
give you
the high
this
school-
one today, I'll give you this today, but I'm gonna go stop by their offices and I'll pick up a stack.
We'll make sure the council.
Yeah, but I think it's a really good resource. Like I said, I'd known about them for a very long time. I knew some of the services that they had, but it looks like they've grown quite a bit. And I think there's a lot to get their resource families.
Thanks for sharing that.
Always concerned about summer slide for achievement for students. Have you so the highlight of the summer for showing what students can do between school semesters. I'm also encouraged by what if what I see in my neighborhood and surrounding with the Detroit Public Library being attended by a lot of students. They're reading, they're doing things. It's encouraging that they're just not watching TV or got their nose into their into their cell phones and texting and so forth. But they're actually doing things at the library and being engaged in learning. Not everybody, but it is encouraging to see that there's not really, in my opinion, going to be that much of a summer slide, that there's a lot of achievement and motivation with our students that carries on into the fall. So that's my offering today.
I have two topics. The first one is very similar to what Amina said. The Rotary Club of Troy has reached out, and they apparently have a lot of volunteering opportunities, and they always look for students, and they want connections to high schools like National Honor Society kids or whatever. And they want some kind of a permanent connection, I guess, where they can reach out to say, hey, students, we need help for this, and then they can get volunteering hours. So I can connect with whoever is the one who reached out to me from Rotary. The second topic is about the calendar. So I've gotten a lot of kudos for the calendar, which is amazing. Everybody loves it. All the parents are so happy with it. One group of parents that I hear from is, hey, IA, why are we not part of that calendar? Why aren't we getting all these great advantages that the rest of the school district is getting? So I wanted to bring it up to see how we can incorporate all the good things we did with the TSD calendar to IA also.
So what would be the process of integrating those ideas?
So it would start with the joint council, so that would include, that's me, Rick now, also Dr. Slot and Huron Valley, the new superintendent Rochester, and then Adika Roberson, Dr. Roberson in Birmingham. The five of us sit on that council, so we would have a conversation, and so I have it on my notes for our September meeting. I'll bring it up to the group, and then that is a collectively bargained. That's
That's what I was gonna ask you.
Contract as well, and I'm not sure when they're. John, you know when the IA's contract is up? Is it 2 more years?
I think it's 2 more. I can verify that, but I think it's 2 more.
I think it was just
I
last
think
year.
it's-
we approved it. Is it
I
this year?
think it's this year.
It expires
Oh.
this year.
Expires this year.
Right, so that would be timely. I'll bring it up with the group, and but it is collectively bargained, and so we'll have to work through that.
Help me understand that. What's the bargaining unit?
So they have their own representatives from each of the campuses will come together. The principals are.
So
on
they're not,
that.
it's not tied to the Bloomfield.
Correct. Well, it is and it isn't. To some degree, it has, their calendar had traditionally matched the Bloomfield calendar because our students, the student information system runs through Bloomfield. So the SIS, the student information system, runs through Bloomfield.
Okay.
So all of the pupil accounting and all of that for all 3 campuses runs through Bloomfield. So, and that was from the very beginning. So as a result of that, they were on Bloomfield's calendar to.
But they don't have to be, because the bargaining units are.
Theoretically, they don't, because their contract, or their calendar is different than all of the 3 campuses currently.
So they have a contract, I mean, from a financial perspective, I thought it was, they, like anybody who was hired as a Troy teacher follows our.
So when I say contract, I
Yeah, so
probably-
what are the
that's-
elements of that?
It's a misnomer when I say contract. What they have is a consortium agreement
Okay.
that sits within their individually collective bargaining contracts. So each member of the IA first defaults to their
Home
home district's contract. That's how they're compensated. and mainly it's compensation and their fringe benefits. Now, anything that is over and above part of being a member of the IA, so there's an additional stipend because of the additional days that they work. There's some working conditions that are bargained as a result of that.
Would
There's-
placement be part of that now?
We handle placements kind of individually per district, right? We haven't had to.
Placement language would apply for our folks.
So it's part of our contract, part of it.
So IA doesn't have an ability to pick up someone from East Campus and move them to Central Campus, for instance?
We could do that if it were necessary as part of the consortium agreement, but that would be an internal conversation.
So that would be tied to, so if it was a Troy hire, we would have the conversation. If it was a Birmingham hire working
Right.
here in Troy,
So, for
they would be
instance-
tied to Birmingham's contract. Okay, all right, I'm sorry.
So
I'm
for
just trying to
instance,
understand.
this fall, this coming fall, we have currently we had last year a teacher, that's a Troy teacher, shared between the East Campus and Central Campus. Central Campus didn't need that teacher any longer. We brought we were able to bring that teacher back fully to the East Campus. That conversation took place between Christine and her counterpart there in Bloomfield, and we made that work. So these are conversations that situate themselves kind of within the collective. It's a very unique agreement.
Yeah.
There's
Well, that's why I was
there's
trying to
no
understand what
agreement
else would be
in the
in
United
it.
States.
Okay.
And so what I will commit to is having that conversation with the group to see if there is a mutual agreement to move towards that calendar.
Is it primarily the
being
holidays
reflective of-
that they want, or?
Yeah.
Well, actually, there's three things that are completely different from our contract, which is, it starts on August 14th, I think, 3 weeks or 2.5 weeks
Sure,
early.
yeah.
And it ends June 22nd or something, 2 weeks
Right.
later, literally 4 weeks more, which may be required, I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's-
There is 15 early release days, 1/5, in the contract, that's the second one. And the third one is holidays.
Do you think it would be helpful, because this is not something that we have control over, to maybe in the fall, at some point to explain to families that how it's differentiated? So my question is, do families understand that that's not something that we as a district can control?
Yes, but I think it would be helpful, and it's not that they've been living with it for a while, right? Even like our district, so it's just like we are trying to improve, and we had improved this, we gotta make an attempt to improve.
Is there a way that we can tell them who to communicate their desires to? So like I know you guys have open meetings, but like, is there a forum that, like, people who are coming to you so that you, like, to say, like, if this is something that's important to you, email Lynn Gibson, like, these are the
Yeah,
people
feedback
that you should
helps.
reach.
Yeah.
It would be
So that it's.
Mr. Griffin.
Okay.
They should start with the building principal, share that concern with him, because if he's hearing from the parents at ease, he has the ability to take that to their tri-campus meeting, and as he's meeting with the other principals, and say, these are concerns that are being shared within my community, are you hearing similar concerns? And it can start with them, and within that conversation, then they would bring those concerns or asks to the joint council, and then we would work with
Just
them.
feels like it would have more weight if it was coming.
Absolutely, and I can pass that information on to them as well,
But-
but we also
but it's
represent
appropriate- yeah, I
them,
was
so
gonna say,
we
it's an
have to
appropriate
take to that.
conversation to
Yes.
have about it, so.
Rich, can you just explain, is it ultimately, are there teacher representatives from the campus that serve kind of as a
Yes.
bargaining team?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
So it isn't the administrators that make those decisions, it has to go before this, and who is that for us?
So for us, it's the principals sit on, that. There are teacher representatives from each of the campuses. And then in the past, it had been Jordan who kind of served as the chief spokesperson through the bargaining process. I guess likely John will sit in that process moving forward.
So who's our
Yay.
teacher representative? Is
Uh,
that something that gets voted on once a year, or how, is it like the
Is
same?
there a president?
Yeah, is it
right.
like the same authority
We
that
had
Jason has?
our TEA building reps that were part of that process. So like Alex Benitez is a teacher there that was part of that, on the bargaining team.
Kelly Patterson.
Kelly Patterson as well, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so they're kind of double added then?
Yes.
Okay, got it. I guess I didn't understand
But-
how that worked.
I guess that is something as we go into bargaining, we can tell our parents that that's a priority for us.
But I think what you could relay to tell to them is that you've shared the information with the board and with me, and then I'm gonna take that information back to the joint council, and we'll have that conversation. They should also share their concerns with Patrick,
Right.
with Mr. Griffin, and so that he can have that conversation at his level with the other principal, with his other principals, and then, as we work through it collaboratively, we'll,
And let them know that that's a,
those voices will have been shared.
that that's a negotiated topic, and it's broader than just Troy. Anything else?
Thank you. Taking
How about you?
So our good friend Jonathan Haight here is also supporting work with the Dignity Index people
Oh.
to have created a film called Undivide Us. And so it is a documentary that is looking at what it means to have civil conversations among people who might have polarizing belief systems. So there is a local screening of Undivide Us in Royal Oak on August 11th. It's being held at Royal Oak First United Methodist Church. But it's also, like, if you look at the Undivide Us website and watch the trailer for the film, it's mostly being screened across the country at libraries, colleges, things like that. So, I can't go to the screening on August 11th because I already have tickets to see my daughter perform. So,
That's more important.
so that's the weekend she's doing her play. So if anyone wants to go see a play, tickets are on sale. It's got 3 Troy alumni. But anyway, the Undivide Us, the trail, everything was really good. So I want to encourage people, if they can, to make it to that, or to see if it would be something that we could partner with, maybe the library or
I
something.
was gonna say,
to
could
host
we
in
bring it
Troy.
here as a conversation, or, if we do
Yeah.
community conversations around the book?
Because
That
it's-
might be a really neat focal.
Yeah, I mean,
Community book reads, right?
Yeah.
That was something that.
Well, and we've brought films before.
well, that's what I was
Yeah.
gonna say with part of this conversation. I remember how helpful it was when we did the Screenagers documentary.
Yes,
And like how.
that was it. I was trying to remember what it was.
Yeah, and like how many families watched that and that was a really potent conversation piece. So anyway, just seeing, like I said, the trailer for Undivide Us looks really powerful. It's only it's an hour and 15 minutes, and it's just all about how do we use dignified language, have respectful conversations with people that we might not see eye to eye with. And so I just was like, I wanted to raise awareness that that's out there.
That's pretty cool, those two things coming together. That's really.
Yeah, I know, yeah, like,
cool.
that's what, and so like and it's one of those things, like when I saw the trailer for it, I was like, oh, that's cool, and then I was like, oh, Jonathan Heath supporting it, the Dignity Index is a part of it, like, these people that I highly respect are part of this project.
Cool. Good time.
Just a quick one for me, and Christine, you might be interested in this, but I went to a kind of year-end Women Tomorrow event, and much to my delight, one of our former Niles alumni, well, actually, I guess we were still TCCHS, but she was at Niles, came and spoke. So a young lady by the name of Rupa Khan, who was very quiet, had a lot of anxiety when she was in high school. And now she was speaking in front of a group of several hundred people, very poised. And she is about to finish her bachelor's degree in psychology, has already been accepted into a master's program, and First of all, I was very gratified because, you know, sometimes wonder if these Women of Tomorrow programs make a big difference, but, you know, she obviously stayed in touch with the organization. But she spoke very highly of her experience at Niles. She was in the old building, so she made a little bit of a comment about the, and I told her, so she's gonna come back and speak to, you know, to our girls in the fall, because she says, I heard amazing things about the new building. But she did talk about, you know, that high school experience, giving her the confidence to launch her, you know, into a career and, you know, become a successful.
That's really
you know,
exciting.
On the path to success. So it's always exciting when you kind of run into alumni, you know, in the future. They
See
have
some
that-
success, you
Yes,
know,
yeah.
that's.
So anyways, I'm gonna make sure I know Angela wasn't there.
Yeah, it would be great, and I'm sure Angela always has monthly, I mean, even speaking to the whole school, right? Like she has, all school meetings and all school assemblies, experiences, that would be a really great speaker to bring back.
Yeah. And it was interesting because she got a Woman of Tomorrow scholarship to Rochester College. That wasn't a good fit for her. Rochester College gives very generous scholarships. But I'm really thankful to Women of Tomorrow when she wanted to transfer, they transferred, they got Oakland University to kind of pick up the same support for her. So, you know, she was able to get scholarship money at Oakland.
That's great.
Yeah, so anyways, just nice to kind of hear a success.
Yeah, wonderful, thank you.
I just had, this week we will, I'll provide you an update on summer work halfway through, so Rob's preparing that. Just as an FYI, we do have some water issues here and there, as you might expect. We are-
Yeah.
It's just been raining like crazy.
Backyard, I woke up this morning.
Some issues at Troy High in the cafeteria that Rob's trying to figure out. That just happened, started this year, so we're trying to think, is there something
Since the
underground?
start of the construction or before that? Because I'm like, are we
No,
we're standing here? As we start tearing up the ground around
He
it,
thinks
so
it
water-
has something to do with that underground, that, yeah, so would not have anything to do with that. So we'll give you an update as to where we are with summer work. Everything else is moving along. Paving is obviously slowed down a little bit because of the rain, but otherwise we're on schedule with everything. And then the other piece, I just want to just let you know that we're following up. Rob and I met with the gentleman who spoke at the last meeting regarding the stormwater
Yeah.
in his yard. So we met with he and his neighbor today. Robin is going to follow up with a conversation with a representative from the city, and we committed to getting back to Mr. Storrs within a couple of weeks. Don't know if there's anything we can do.
You know,
It's not really local, it's not really, we believe, at least he acknowledges it really has nothing to do with what he initially thought it was. But we have committed at least to looking into it for him to see, and his neighbor, to see if there's something that we are doing that might be contributing, and if so, remedy it. So we, just as FYI, we met, we'll follow up.
Any updates on that process?
Oh, yeah, I was gonna ask that, yeah.
Must be moving along because he didn't say anything. He didn't say there was a problem. I'll make sure that I'll make sure that that's in the notes.
What's the, sort of what, the initial timetable for being able to make that?
Oh, definitely for the fall.
Like, while in advance of that, or?
Oh, yeah,
Are we getting up the
yeah,
whole summer?
No, he said he did. He didn't indicate that there were any problems. In fact, when school was ending, they were pretty close to 100% remediation at that point. So they did have to order some new bookcases and some things like that.
So all the teacher stuff that they brought over here, is everybody just holding it at home until they can?
The
they
personal
start-
items they're
Yeah.
holding, yeah, and then we captured a good portion of that, so.
Actually, and I wanted to talk about that.
Furniture anyway, so they
Right.
probably were,
Yeah.
thankfully, they were probably
Yeah.
already starting.
Do we, I wanted to talk about that because when I think at Rick's going away party, I was having a conversation about that, and Dean was saying that we have a lot of teachers lost a lot of personal stuff book collections, things like that. And I know that he had to assemble sort of a total on that, but it wasn't clear whether the insurance would cover any of that. And I wasn't sure.
So insurance will cover some of that. We have made arrangements to, from the district to, the pieces that the insurance will cover, we are making arrangements.
Within our budget?
Yeah.
Okay, good, because I was just, if we possibly could do that, I was
Yeah.
going to say, could we do that? Because that's so unfair for the teachers to have to do it twice, you know, it's already,
Yeah.
okay, great. I'm glad to hear that.
What are we doing with the enrollment numbers going in?
The last, still a little bit early, it's hard to get a good read this in July, usually August 1st, we get a pretty good solid read. But the check that I did Monday, Friday as it was, we were right at our projection at this point. And I looked at year over year, we were right at our projection this time last year as well. And we came in over our projection. So if that's a unscientific sign of things to come, we should hit our projection and be a little bit over it. But again, really hard to tell. What we are able to tell is that our kindergarten numbers are trending because we're capturing those numbers a lot earlier, so they are trending where we want them to be.
My scientific numbers in my neighborhood, there's people moving in and everybody has 2 kids.
I'm sure
So
we'll
happy about that.
Sure. Keep them coming, but yes,
Yes,
as soon as I
exactly.
as soon as I have a more firm number, I think I'll get those out to you. August 1st likely will be probably our best guess, our best indication.
I have a question about schooling. Did Dan run the numbers? Do we know kind of what we think we're going to have versus what we budgeted?
So I looked at some numbers today that John, because I have not seen anything official from the state. We've not gotten anything official from the state at this point. NEA put out some information, and I looked at that. And we'll be better than what we assumed,
Right.
but not anywhere near what we hoped.
Right.
Based on. So we should be, the best I could guess, I could tell from that, John, $200 more
That's what I read.
per pupil than what we assumed.
Right.
So around 420 extra.
Yes.
Okay. All
I
right.
think this is the state website.
You know, we had 200, we had anticipated, I think our assumption was 200.
Yeah, 221, I think.
And then we think it's about 2, at this point, there is a big push, if you're reading your news feeds, there's a big push for a supplemental, and the hopes would be that in the supplemental budget, which every year there is a supplemental, it doesn't always impact schools, but in this case, that the supplemental would put back the $300 million from the safety and security, which is about $2 million for us, 2.3, I think, million for us. So that would be that supplemental would be very helpful for us, but there's no guarantee that that will occur.
Well, because that money that was put in there was Fed money coming in, that was COVID money. Like the state funded that with COVID money, and their money dried up too.
Right.
When I was reading the MASB, the latest thing from Jennifer in the newsletter, I forwarded that to Christy, because I said, okay, well, here's what they're saying, you know, because she's been exasperated because a lot of things that they're saying are red herrings.
Thank you.
Well, some of it you go through and you go, you know, we need to really sharpen our message and we need to talk about the things that matter. So like they are talking about things like, oh, you know, we can't plan ahead. And it's like, we've never been able to.
I know.
Right? It's like, what are you
Yeah,
talking
that's
about?
like-
We
Yeah.
never had, we never get more than this year's allotment. A couple things I just want to make sure everybody here understands. The move or the bump for charter schools that they got, that is not that's a one-time thing. It is not a change in their per pupil. And the reason they got that happened, it was the only way they could push through everything else to get enough Republican votes to pass through the other things that they had. So some of this stuff that we look at and go, why are they doing that? It's like, well, that's the sausage making of legislation, right? And you know, and trying to make sure that happens. Now, they did move money from the increased money from the one-time for the safety and security. There's ongoing funds that they move money into. So what I don't know is what the overall match was, but she said to claim a complete loss of that is really frustrating for them, because they said at the state level, we were getting lots of criticism about, there's only so many safety dogs we can, or comfort dogs that we can hire. You know, it's like we need ongoing funding of this stuff. So they took state funding and moved it into something that would be recurring. So she's frustrated. She says, we're not getting any credit for any of the work that we're doing in terms of what we're listing for. But she actually put together a point-by-point response to what Jennifer wrote. So if you want me to, I'll forward it back to you so you can kind of look at it. But because I think we need to be realistic, and we also need to be very focused and say, this is really what we want. But on the good side, we are above the rate of inflation. Like, the increase was above the rate of inflation. That's the first time we not only met, but actually exceeded inflation in 20 years. So the efforts that we started, and we didn't get everything we wanted, but we did make a difference. You know, I mean, it's definitely almost twice what we would have gotten.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So I just want to make sure that, you know, we have to at least recognize that our efforts were not in vain, and that resulted in, so I'm happy to hear that at least, because that's what I was thinking, if we were somewhere around double.
Yeah.
But there's so many categoricals, and then looking at like the special ed stuff and the at-risk kids and other things, I'm like, I have no way of understanding what that means for us.
There are still well over 100 categories.
Wow.
Outside of the bigger ones, the bilingual, ELD, special ed, there are well over 100 that require personnel to address. And somebody focusing on them, applying for them, following up on that, tracking it, all of that has to come through the business services and teaching and learning. Teaching and learning is an important component.
Yeah.
We were reducing categoricals and now we're.
No, right. And that's, you know, when I've been talking to Christy about that stuff, I was like, you know, the goal here is move it into our general funding. Simplify it and let the districts decide how they need to use the money. You know, that's the, but I think that's a really good, I would love to be able to document all the categoricals this year and then indicate how many staff hours that we would have to do for us. And then say, multiply that by 550 real districts and, you know, in across the state, and say, this is what you're driving. You're like, you're diluting the money because you're taking resources that could be applied to the classroom, and you require administration, you know, to get, and you have to do it because you need the money, right? You've got to fight for the money.
And a bigger district like us can afford to have a person
Right.
to do this, but small districts can't.
Well,
Yeah.
this year we
lose that.
actually added a position, we reworked some other things, but we were able to add a grants accountant specific to the grants that we have. So that individual's role, I mean, they do some other things, but
Yeah.
primary role is monitoring all of those grants and making sure that we're capturing all the revenue that is available to us, and then on the back end, accounting for it all, you know, making sure that processes are appropriate. So,
Yeah, it's, again, that's gonna be a benefit to a district that can afford to bring that person in, and
Right.
that person more than pays for themselves, right?
Right.
A smaller district.
A smaller district is not
gonna be able
going
to.
to be able to keep up.
And then
They're missing dollars.
Right, I was gonna say, let's leave money on the table.
Districts that can least afford to miss dollars
Are missing dollars.
Yeah, without question.
So I think that might be a good tact for us to, if we can document that and, you know, have that Lansing with that kind of information, I think I think that's what we need to do. We need to, but I also want to make sure that it's not all piss and vinegar over, like if we don't get the supplemental, I want to make sure that we at least thank a number of people for efforts to increase our funding above the rate of inflation. Because when we went down there, or up there, or over there, you know, that was the big thing, is we said, you've been under the rate of inflation for 20 years. That means if you're gonna fix this every year, you have to be higher than the rate of inflation to finally get us back to where we would be. Right? So this is the first time we've done that.
I mean, at the end of the day, what really matters for us is what the numbers, like, the amount of money they
Yeah.
get from is to some degree on a year-to-year basis, not looking at the fundamentals of public education on a year-to-year basis. That's
Yeah.
what really matters.
So I'll send you back her point-by-point comment against that, because I think it's helpful for us to understand, and that's one where, and I know that, like Christy said, all of the schools, they're meeting with the superintendents in their district, to walk through all those things from the MASBs to make sure all the superintendents understand, here's what's really going on. Your association from a school board perspective is really saying these things and they're not very accurate, right?
Wouldn't it be helpful to send her some teacher and say, you need to
Yeah.
clarify this for people?
I've been saying that to Jennifer
Well-
Smith for how many, I've been on the board 13 years. I've been saying, reduce, clarify.
Because you're right, I read her thing and thought, oh my God,
It's all due.
they put a foundation allowance increase in charter schools, why would they do that? And then I had to read on something else I read, said, no, this was just one time.
We have to make sure it's, yeah.
Yeah, there is one thing though I understood, we benefited from the increase because of also the amount of employees we had, because the money you got was based on our.
Yeah, that came, it's the
Came through
mixers
mixers.
offset, so.
Yeah.
So not all schools had the benefit of that, like Birmingham, I believe, got $600 per pupil increase because they had a lot of employees, maybe, it ended up being $600 per pupil. So the increase is so
It's dependent upon your
mismatched
payroll.
all
Yeah, it's
across
payroll.
the state.
And the payroll of those individuals that are in the MIPSR system too, that's, in your budget is equally then impacted on the
Yeah, if your
expenditure
payroll
side
had
as well.
have gotten much higher.
I mean, it probably won't be that, like Birmingham's an oddball, Birmingham and those other oddballs because they have so much money, but I think for most districts, if your student ratio is about the same, then your impact will be about the same, right? I mean, that's kind of so.
Assuming your staffing is
Assuming your-
consistent with your student ratio.
But again, well, to your other point about leaving dollars on the table, some of our struggling districts are gonna have a higher student to teacher ratio, which means that MIPSR's contribution then will be less impactful than us, right? So you're actually, doing this as a MIPSR's thing is, funding only as a MIPSR's thing.
They'll get increased funding for somewhere else.
No,
Yeah, well, and
That's-
actually,
that's
no,
the-
you're right, because that's the categoricals, because if you
Categoricals.
look at the at-risk, then they're doing okay. So, once again, we're in the middle. Yeah.
But it's kind of like our school calendar, it got so complicated, I mean, at some point, having to look at 100 factors to figure out what your final number is, systems over time can become a little complicated.
That's why I think this idea of showing a new position to make sure we capture the dollars, and then go through 100 categoricals and talk about I would love to flow chart, what do I have to do to get each of those, money from each of those categoricals, so that you, in each case, you go, this is all bureaucracy, right? This is just time and energy and bureaucracy that doesn't need to be there. Just give the money as part of the base allowance and let the districts figure out how to spend it. So, okay, all right, well, there's our lobbying marching orders for this year as we go through. Good, I don't think I have anything else. Is there anything else? I feel like there was something else I was gonna talk about. Anyone else tell me, poke me, and I say we'll talk about it. I always say we'll cover it under other, and then I didn't write
We
it.
covered the two things that,
So you're gonna contact us offline or tell us offline if we need a closed session?
Yeah. I'm sitting down with Jordan and John on Thursday to kind of go through and look at, Jordan did a salary and benefit comparison across Oakland County for superintendents. So, I want to sit down with them and go walk through that and look at it before we just finalize the contract. So we will have to do a closed session to talk about that. So,
So my question is it just for the superintendent
Yeah.
contract? Okay. So if the person
Oh.
involved is over there?
No, but we have, but we don't need a closed session to talk about that, right? Because
I mean, you can.
we can cover all of that.
Cover it all at the same time.
Because I don't know, I've got to find out what changed. So, right, so we'll figure it out. I'll get back to everybody offline and find out if we need to.
So my only suggestion is if it is that one contract and that particular individual is willing to wait until, as he's indicated to be waiting until the August meeting, so that way we're already
Yes.
here, then I would suggest not to do another meeting on
Yes,
another.
we've already talked
day,
about that,
but-
and that's what we'll do.
Yeah.
If it's only one individual, that's okay.
Yeah, if not, then it's, I think it's, that might be different, but yeah.
And again, even if it's multiple, but I look at it and go, it's pretty straightforward, we can figure it out, we'll just do this thing.
Yeah.
But I'm speaking out of turn because I haven't had a meeting yet with these guys, to know what we're talking about, so once I look that up. Okay, good. Thank you. Cool, okay, sounds good. Okay.
Can I suggest we take a couple minute break? And I know that a couple people had to leave at 11, so we probably are not gonna have a full day.
No, that's what I figured, we could just have start the conversation and keep going with it,
I'm okay, we can just. Sorry.
That's what I was gonna say, can we take a
Okay.
yeah.
Yes, that is too much, I'll admit.
Yeah, not very. Yeah, but you don't have to. Yeah. So we're going through.
I've done all the.
Okay, so where do we?
I've literally,
In all of this.
I've literally done all the heavy lifting.
So, I mean,
Literally done.
Nope.
So we sold it, we sold all the place and moved out of the place, and we have to sell. That's done. That was, July.
I don't think I'm gonna say that.
Okay, you're bringing it. We closed yesterday.
You sold that too, then?
We sold that in a weekend. Wow, we sold both of them. Actually, the way they're.
I'll get that one, I'm not surprised. I figured
did it. We did everything.
I was looking through the November workshop where
So-
the academic results were.
We did, so we sold those.
And,
both on our
there's a
house
linear regression
yesterday,
that
and
was presented
they're moving
for performance
So we have been,
relative to.
we have been,
That was Cindy too.
Cindy, is,
Median
was in.
She's in.
Something.
It's going so fast now, like these closings and everything, they're gonna take under 30 days.
Together, I'm just curious, 'cause that's pretty good.
I'll have to look at what you are referencing.
And then
Is it the one where we have the chart of
July 3rd, so we
achievement
were
based on,
and they moved out.
is it looking at Troy
So we
compared
were
to
able
other
to-
districts or similar socioeconomic? Lake County did that for us.
Oh,
So
okay.
Oakland Schools puts together a variety of different.
But we were able to pretty much do a
Looking
lot
at
of the moving
specifically how
prior to
Troy's
the
doing
date,
compared
so we
to
got a
other
lot of stuff moved
districts.
over there, so they're moving today.
And the NWA pilot, that I think is in 6, 7, and high
So
school.
we're downsizing.
Algebra, is
Is
that
it
continuing?
Algebra 1?
Algebra 1.
Yeah, so that NWA.
Well, but
you're
so
combining
they
two
did
houses.
to a small.
Yeah, I hope you didn't buy a
We
lot of
actually
stuff.
had all.
No, we were able to,
Looking at our
he would,
implementation
the guy
for
bought, single guy bought a lot of.
And it was only in pockets last year because we only had the new curriculum in the classrooms.
Got it.
So next year it's our goal next year is that it's more holistically applied across the
Good
middle
number.
and then it'll grow.
Oh, okay, so it's, because I know the state of Michigan has
Stuff.
subsidized
doing
K through 8,
We're doing
for testing.
State
If
sales. We're having
it's
somebody come in
iReady,
and do
NWA, or STAR, I think those were the.
after,
Yes,
at our,
and so
at
we're
our
planning
house.
to.
So we're actually.
You're correct.
Oh, here it is. Got it.
Is that whole basement?
Other than.
Yeah, I just pulled it.
Yeah.
Anything.
Oh, this place doesn't have a basement.
Yeah.
Right, so we, I mean, we're literally.
A little bit more. Except that we were able to manipulate a little bit more than
Right,
that
if you count the
with the
basement.
SAT, right? The SAT only.
Thank you for coming.
So many, it's dead.
There's no, that's why I'm laughing about downside.
It's not small by any stretch, but it's,
Take
all of that stuff.
It's a lot of There's no basement, so there, it's actually, it is more downside than you consider.
no basement, no attic.
We're just gonna start.
Right, so it's really running from more. Part of the reason I pretty much touched
Do
everything.
you get any of that, maybe for the piece that there was some kind of, like, part of algebra, or enhanced 6
I don't know the
years,
answer to that, but
and
we
before
told
that,
them
you
that
never
every
guess
day
what I
was,
get.
So today there's
Police officer, 26 years.
Right, so
So you're
when
out
we
of
think
your
about
regular-
us, I grew up at Taft.
It's only 2 years for that today.
Correct.
Have you been there, stayed there, or have you been staying?
No,
there?
it's
Okay.
not.
We want them to develop.
when
We
it's
have
up,
to
it's
like
been
not
slotted.
yet. Right, so like the crosswalk.
Okay, so this is it, yeah, you're, so you're gonna be better today. Okay, all right.
And then that's exciting.
That's really exciting.
But
Oh,
You said it,
we've done, we did quite
we have
a
to
bit.
some
We've back and forth, taking stuff.
I will.
And we will,
To simplify
I
it.
think your presentation was very good. Thank you.
So we have multiple, so for our students who are. Majority of our business.
Can you sit here while you're
If they're looking for-
Pretty much don't.
They're looking
Yes,
at
first, then.
Yeah, so most of the.
So I said, no, pat myself.
I'm sorry? Oh, I gotta go back to it. I'd love to say talk about
So,
I don't.
yeah, that goes to state
I would try like 8.
State sales, actually.
8 or 10, is there 10 on them?
There is.
Okay, yeah.
Whatever that
So,
is.
for our high school.
Well, it was a recommendation.
Because then if they don't pass it in April, they can do summer school. And then they don't have to worry about testing out because of basic.
It's so fast. I mean, I just can't believe that you've got everything, even in City too. I mean, the whole thing is like,
We have a test out.
that was like 3 weeks ago, I feel like we were having a conversation and everything was in chaos in Indiana. And it's like, wow, in 1 month, it all times down.
Because you would just take this up.
City
That would-
moved,
Which
yes.
is middle school is
And,
right, summer school's not super common for advancement.
To Royal.
Also because
Yeah,
most of our summer school classes
City Maxwell.
that we offer in Troy are all asynchronous.
They,
So they're not.
Yeah, they're online
I
too.
wouldn't recommend, like, that's not a great way to learn.
Sure.
Right, so it might not be a terrible way to learn.
But she's in a really good place. And so she's in.
I think there's a certain subject
I don't
of
decide.
like being able to learn asynchronously and also it's like
And then
it's supplemental instruction
Yeah,
anyways.
for sure.
And frankly, the test for, the advancement for that might be easier than just 77% that's required.
Well, I'm sure it over you, preschool start, you'll preschool framework, and then, in fact, they're in preschool now.
Yeah, and
They're no close support.
you know,
And then
it's
Mary Florida, then
really
maybe it'll be a-
elementary, middle, high school.
But that exam is easier. Or matriculating candidates.
They're three different.
And so for us, I think there's been a shift.
And there are different implications for each level.
Yeah.
No, that's.
This isn't like the mechanism for this, like test out isn't.
But I think maybe it's just a
It's
question,
hard,
you know.
but it's,
Well, and then
ultimately, it's
you
gonna
have the motivation to want to take the test out and then take it to one of the ones and work with your family tutor online, however you get those results. Your perseverance is high up, you're gonna
Well, they're gonna be involved.
you're like,
Maybe
it's not
it's
successful. Later, it's fine, right? So like our goal is.
There's not a full life, I mean, ultimately, it is on, you love it.
Did you see it?
That's what you wanna do, and that's how you wanna spend your summer, and that's like, it's all yours, like,
Right.
the fees.
gotta be there in sport, and so fortunately.
It's the chance
She was, I think, is one of the biggest, my biggest.
balancing that with making sure that there's some like,
A little bit, yeah. It's a little chilly.
What's that?
Yeah.
It's nice, I mean,
So,
nice, but
the
better be
whole
without.
system in the school change, and all of these aspects.
It's different though.
Now we're all learning that.
Oh, it's, you're like, it's the, yeah, it's linked to the 4 years of math. They want
Right.
really strong competency, otherwise it just sets them for not having
Kids
good
just-
math. The rest of the
Right.
Actually,
And like, when you have college and all of those.
That makes sense.
So I think over the last few years, we've gone down the cheese and the goal really is that
Things
we can ensure that they have a really solid foundation.
Okay, so we don't have time to really
conversation here. But,
How long is that? Having opportunities, well, our goal is that they're continuing to thrive. And our goal is also that we make sure
Can you
that
stay
all
till
kids who
11:30?
wanted to
Huh?
stay
Can you stay till 11:30?
are able to do well. Even if they're not necessarily.
Okay, so we have time. I think we need to
Right, because
start
not
because
everybody's parents.
August is gonna be busy, September's gonna be busy.
I
We
put
need to
grade
start.
school, right, like my kids are gonna do.
Okay,
well,
so,
I know where to go. Every kid has.
I was really looking forward to a hard stop time of 11.
That's
So I'm really busy right now, so I would like.
Can we do 11:15 hard stop?
We can do 11:15 right now, that's fine.
I have to get it online.
Yeah.
at 11:30.
Okay, so
So,
11:15.
did everyone